Well, it's great to be with you this morning. If we have not met, my name is Dan. I'm one of the pastors on staff here, and it's my delight to be with you this morning. And I was kind of a little bummed because I thought we were going to celebrate, Epic leaving the room and all the because I have a middle school story to tell, and they're not here. But you can convey the message to them later. Sounds good. You are here. Thanks, Austin. Everybody, Austin's in the room. Now, you might remember this story, maybe. It's a long shot of a story to remember. About 20 years ago, here in Redwood City, there was an unlikely girls' middle school basketball team that went to the national championships. Club team here in Redwood City that they weren't particularly talented. In fact, they were not that tall. Half the team couldn't dribble. A few of them maybe could shoot enough to hit the rim. And the worst part about it is they didn't have a coach. And no coach. And one of the girls on the team asked her father if he would coach the team, and he agreed because he wanted to spend some more time with his daughter. The problem is her dad had never, ever played basketball, let alone touched a basketball up until that time. And he had two rules. During the game, never raise your voice. Because he understood that 12-year-old girls, a little emotionally challenged, did not respond well to yelling. So, no raising of your voice. And the second rule was full court press 100% of the time. In other words, the team never basically got past the halfway mark to get into the other team's scoring capacity. So the idea was to not necessarily develop a lot of skill as a coach, but to just get them absolutely physically fit. And because of that, they flustered all those other teams. Much better teams, and then they flustered them incessantly. They either couldn't inbound the ball in time, or they couldn't get across the half court in time, so there's constant turnovers. And eventually, just enough layups, they were able to win the game over and over and over again to go all the way to the national championship. It's an amazing, true story here in Redwood City. That coach is a man named Vivek Ranadive. You might have heard of him. He was the CEO of a software company called Tibco, and he hired somebody named Roger Craig when he retired from the San Francisco 49ers to be on his team. And Roger Craig had the ability to run these girls like soccer drills, and they became so physically fit that they weren't so concerned about skill, but they were concerned about speed. Now, Vivek Ranadive, if you haven't heard, but you might know of him, he is actually the general manager and the owner of the Sacramento Kings now. True story. Now, it's amazing. We all love underdog stories, right? We love to know about underdogs and how they kind of overcome adversity. Like, for instance, an athlete like Kurt Warner, who was shelving goods in a grocery store, ends up becoming the Super Bowl MVP years later. Or a guy named Jamie Oliver, who was a kid growing up in England who could barely read due to dyslexia, and at some point in his early education was actually put in a special needs class. Become one of the most celebrated chefs in all of England and here in the U.S. as well. Or, someone who overcomes adversity in a way where they're overcoming someone else's adversity, someone who fights for systemic injustice like William Wilberforce. These are people that we recognize, we celebrate for the underdog stories that they represent. Now, individual success is often what we look to, but we know that when we work together, we can create something extraordinary when we work together. Psychological data shows that humans are prone to three distinct desires. The first is community. The second is significance. And the third is transcendence. In other words, no one of us is as good as all of us. Simply put, we humans made in the image of God want to do things together. We want to do things that matter, and we want to do things that matter together to have an extraordinary outcome. A couple weeks ago, we began a brand new series called Built to Worship, going through the book of Nehemiah. And we are taking a look at how this book in the Old Testament is kind of informing our future today and how we live in today's culture. And it's interesting when Mark asked me to do chapter 3, I thought this is going to be no problem. Because when I was a senior pastor several years ago, I did 28 weeks in Nehemiah. I thought this is going to be awesome. All I have to do is just kind of like look at what I did before, and I could just plug me in, coach, wherever you want me. And he said, well, can you do chapter 3? And I went, absolutely. And then I went and looked at all my notes, and guess what? I skipped chapter 3. I went from chapter 2 all the way to chapter 4. I just no, I'm not doing chapter 3. Because it's nothing but names and places. That's the whole entire chapter of Nehemiah. Chapter 3 is just names and places. So what am I going to say here? And in God's humor, I think God was saying, Dan, you owe me a chapter. You're going to do it? So here we are. We're looking at chapter 3 this morning. And if you remember last week, Mark was going through chapter 2. And in chapter 2, we saw how Nehemiah had been given favor by the king to rebuild the city. But he first inspects the conditions of the wall in the middle of the night, and then he prospects what needs to be done to the people who were there. And this is what the response of those at the end of Nehemiah said. As Nehemiah basically says, you know what very well trouble that we are in here in Jerusalem? It lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. And the people replied at once, yes, let's build the wall. So they began the good work. So here we are, chapter 3. It's kind of, like I said, nothing but names and places and an occasional commentary about what was going on. But chapter 3, as a whole, is a summary of what is about to occur in chapters 4 through 6. Now, I'm going to show you a couple pictures here. Here's a graphical model of what Jerusalem would have looked like after Jerusalem was reconstructed during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. You see that? It's just kind of like a 3D rendering there. Now, if you're familiar with Jerusalem today, it doesn't really look a whole lot like that. But here are the actual gates and sections of the wall that you can see. Go ahead and go to the next slide. See right there? So you kind of start up there at the very upper right, and then you're going to go in a counterclockwise fashion. This is how the description of chapter 3 in Nehemiah lays out. Now, notice that the shape of that is kind of, it's kind of wide at the top, and then it's kind of really narrow at the bottom. That narrow part at the bottom is what is known as the city of David. And if you were to go to Jerusalem today, the city of David is actually outside the walls of Jerusalem, because this is what the walls look like today in Jerusalem. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So you can see that little dotted section there. That's Nehemiah's Jerusalem, and that is the modern Jerusalem that we can go to today in all those walls around the old city. So you see, it was a very different construct at that time. But we're going to talk about the actual building. Now, here, remember how the people responded at the end of chapter 2. They said, let's do this, and they began the good work. Everyone had a place. Everyone had a place. And this is the idea of community, significance, and transcendence. We're about to see this play out here. Now, what does community look like? Well, let me show you. It's common unity. Common unity. Now, who did the work was associated with where they did their work. Let me say that again. The people who did the work was associated with those where they did their work. So I'm going to go through all the names, not all the names. I'm going to go through the key names. So if I read the whole chapter, it's just a lot of names, lots of pronunciations that are going to fail, I promise you. So I'm going to leave out the fathers and the mothers and the grandfathers, but I'm just going to start with verse 1, chapter 3, and it starts with Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. Verse 2, the men of Jericho built the adjoining section. Meremoth repaired the next section, along with leaders and elders. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa. But check this out. Their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. Their nobles would not work on the wall. Now, Tekoa was a region about 12 miles southwest of Jerusalem. It's an area often mentioned in the Chronicles and Kings. And these nobles basically refused to offer their neck. That is the literal translation. It's like the image of an ox that refuses to be yoked for work. So the nobles basically said, I'm out. But the men of Tekoa did the work. Verse 8, Uzziel, one of the goldsmiths, repaired the next section. Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. They restored Jerusalem as far as the Broad Wall. The Broad Wall today is known as the Western Wall in Jerusalem. That is an area that actually still is part kind of Nehemiah's rebuilding. That's a section that still exists today. It's actually quite amazing, and it's where the Wailing Wall is. If you've been to Jerusalem, you know that. Notice that in the above section here, right here in the first 8 verses, we see the words rebuilt, repaired, and restored. And each one of those have a different meaning, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But unlike the nobles of Tekoa, verse 9, Raphaiah, ruler of half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section. Adjoining this, Jedediah made repairs opposite his house. Hattush made repairs next to him. Malchijah repaired another section and the Tower of the Ovens. Shallum, ruler of half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section with the help of his daughters. Wow. The nobles of Tekoa couldn't do any work, but the daughters of Jerusalem did. Think about that. Notice again, Raphaiah and Shallum are noted as ruler of half a district of Jerusalem. So rulers are involved when nobles were not. Clearly, the work on the walls was not just an affair of labor. As we see with the daughters involved, it's a family affair as well. Going on, verse 13. The residents of Zanoah repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dung gate and also rebuilt the valley gate. Now let me share with you what 1,000 cubits is. It's the lengths of 5 football fields. That's 1,500 feet is 1,000 cubits. The dung gate and fountain gate were repaired by Malchijah and Shallum, respectively. Malchijah did the dung gate, Shallum did the fountain gate. Beyond them, Nehemiah, ruler of a half district of Beth Zur, made repairs up to the point of the opposite of the tombs of David as far as the artificial pool and the house of the heroes were. Now, another thing to point out here, this is not the same Nehemiah. In the times of Ezra and Nehemiah, there's actually 3 different Nehemiahs. Nehemiah, who's telling this, is the governor of Jerusalem, becomes the governor of Jerusalem, and then there are these others who also share the same name. And we, like today, like we have probably, 7 or 8 Johns in this room, right? I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on that one. Verse 17, next to him the repairs were made by the Levites, temple workers. And in this section, they are rebuilding walls around the city of David, that lower section that I pointed out. This area is steep and it's very congested. And in this area, this is where King David and his family and all the kings up until the exile were buried from Jerusalem, from Judah, the tribe of Judah. And at this point, it continues to go on. Hashabiah, ruler of half the district of Kele, carried out repairs for his district. Next to him, the repairs were made by their fellow Levites of the other half district of Kele. Next to him, Ezer, ruler of Mizpah, repaired another section. You see, just like boom, boom, boom. They keep going. They're going around this counterclockwise manner to rebuild the walls. I love this next verse, verse 20. Next to him, Baruch zealously repaired another section from the angle to the entrance of the house of Eliashib the high priest. Baruch zealously repaired another section. Anybody know what Baruch means in Hebrew? Blessed one. Blessed. This is the only time someone's work is actually described as how it's being done in the entire chapter. And I think there's something to be said about how we might work and the way we describe our work here. If you work zealously, you'll be blessed. You'll be blessed if you actually put your effort into it. Do not be a noble of Tekoa and refuse to let that yoke go on your neck. You want to be blessed. I know you do. Don't we all? Verse 21, next to him, Meremoth repaired another section. Oh, wait, that name sounds familiar. Meremoth. Oh, yeah, he was in verse 4. He repaired another section from the entrance of Eliashib's house to the end of it. Verse 22, the repairs next to him were made by the priests from the surrounding region. Verse 23, beyond them, Benjamin and Hashub made repairs in front of their house. Next to them, Azariah made repairs beside his house. Next to him, Binnui repaired another section from Azariah's house to the angle and the corner. You know what two walls said to one another? I'll meet you at the corner. Sorry, it's a bad dad joke. I just couldn't pass it up. I mean, Mark's not here. Somebody had to do it. Meet you at the corner. Now I'm lost. Where did I go? So just a bunch of names and places now, and I'm lost. Thank you. And Palal worked opposite the angle of the tower, projecting from the upper palace near the court of the guard. And next to him, Pedadiah and the temple servants living on the hill Ophel made repairs up to the point opposite of the water gate towards the east and the projecting tower. There's something really powerful going on right here, and it should not be lost on us. Here we see that proximity is on full display. In other words, the people who were rebuilding the wall, they didn't have to go out of their way to do the work. They were building at the entrance of a house, in a surrounding region, in front of their house, beside their house, at Azariah's house, living in the hill of Ophel, which is exactly where they were. You see, they were doing the work at a place that was near and dear to them. They were doing the work at something that was important to them. Verse 27, next to them, the men of Tekoa, oh, there they are again, repaired another section from the great projecting tower to the wall of Ophel. Above the horse gate, the priests made repairs, each in front of his own house. Next to them, Zadok made repairs opposite his house. Next to him, Shemaiah, the guard at the east gate, made repairs. Next to him, Hananiah and Hanun repaired another section. Next to them, Meshullam made repairs opposite his living quarters. Next to him, Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs as far as the house of the temple servants and the merchants opposite the inspection gate, and as far as the room above the corner. And between the room above the corner and the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants made repairs. Wow. There you go. The wall has come full circle. No pun intended. As described in that summary, the workers did what and where they did their work would look something like this. Go ahead and put that up. So you see, you start right up there at the upper left-hand corner. That's where the sheep gate is, and they went down and then around all the way down to the dung gate, the fountain gate, up towards the water gate, and then all the way back to the sheep gate. That is how the walls were rebuilt. And we'll find out in the next couple of weeks just how quickly they did that work. I won't take any surprise away from what Ben and Mark will be talking about later. But it was an extraordinary feat. Now, of this community, who comprised the community? Well, again, in summary, it was priests and Levites, people who did the work of worship and caring for the spiritual welfare of the people in the city. They were temple servants. They were merchants and craftsmen. They were district rulers and their people. There were families working on sections near their homes, including women, as we saw. And there were people from surrounding towns. There were 41 separate areas mentioned in this particular chapter. 35 sections and 6 gates were built or repaired. Now, who were not part of the community, as we said before, those who thought that the work was either below them or they had something else that they thought was more important to do. Let me just say it again. There is a reason why there is the inclusion of someone who said, no, we're not going to do the work. Because it really spoke to the fact that they either thought that the work was not good enough for them or that they had other work to do that was more important than what was going on. It was so obvious what needed to be done that we might ask, well, wait a second. Who would act that way? Who would refuse to do the work? Well, we might. I love what D.L. Moody said. He was if you're not familiar with D.L. Moody, he was a preacher in Chicago around the turn of the 20th century. He said, a great many people have got a false idea about the church. They have got let's check this guy's grammar. They have got an idea that the church is a place to rest in, to get into a nicely cushioned pew, and to contribute to the charities, listen to the minister, and to do their share to keep the church out of bankruptcy. It's all they want to do. The idea of work for them, actual work in the church, never enters their mind. If we take that same approach to do the work that we do around here, anything that we attempt to do will just be insignificant. Our work here at PCC should just be the opposite. Our work should be incredibly significant for the sake of our families, for the sake of our community, for the welfare of our city. Our work at PCC should be significant. And not only should it be meaningful, but our work should matter. So what's so significant about all these people's efforts to rebuild the walls and restore the gates? Notice that most of the time it was said that they would basically rebuild, which was basically nothing more than to repair. Repair is used a lot. Only one time in this whole chapter did the word restore get used, and that was the very first gate, the sheep gate that Eliashib and the priests built. They restored it. But everything else was either repaired or rebuilt. Why is that significant? Well, one represents speed, the other represents skill. If you're going to repair something, rebuild it, that's for speed. If you're going to restore something, it's going to take some time. I'm not real proud to share this with you, but I'm going to. My first car was a 65 Mustang convertible. Loved that car. Loved it. And I remember one time the transmission went out, and I had to rebuild the transmission. I did it as fast as I could. I rebuilt it for speed, baby. And I did it as fast as I could because I wanted to just drive that car again. And whenever something else would go on, I would just fix it. I'd just fix it. When I sold the car, because I was going to go to college in Los Angeles, and I thought, well, if I take a convertible to Los Angeles, it's going to be gone. And someone's going to take a knife and cut the top and hotwire that puppy, and I'd never see it again. So I sold my Mustang, and I bought a Ford Pinto. There you go. There's my shame. Oh, God, what did I do? Because 2 months after I got to Los Angeles and I was parked on the street, somebody hit it in the middle of the night and totaled it. True story. So, the guy who bought my car, I bought my Mustang convertible for $650. I sold it for $1,250. I thought I was making a killing. I couldn't buy that car right now for $65,000. The guy who bought my car, he literally built a garage specifically for that car. Why? Because he was going to restore it to its original glory, the original candy red color, the white top. I had midnight blue, black top. I mean, he wanted to bring it back to its stock condition, as if it just rolled off the factory floor. That's restoration. You know how long it took him to do that? 15 years. And I was welcome to go back and take a look at it, and I just wept. It is so beautiful. It was so beautiful. What they're doing here is they're repairing. They're not restoring. They're not trying to go back to the former glory days of Solomon. They're not trying to make this just an epic city in the world. They're just trying to get back to where they were, to where they can exist and just move on. They weren't trying to grab onto the past. They're trying to embrace the future. So how did a wall and a few gates change everything then? Well, for the people of Jerusalem, what Nehemiah and his people did is they created a belief in the midst of opposition that they could do good work. They restored the former reality, God's people set apart. It wasn't about walls. It was about God's people set apart from the rest of the world. And they secured a future for generations to come. That's what the work on the walls and the gates was all about. Creating a belief, restoring the reality that God's people were set apart, and securing a future for generations to come. Therefore, for us at PCC, what does this say? As we rebuild, what does this mean for us? Well, let me ask you this. Where's your place? Where's your place in the wall? Where's your place in your heart? Where's your place today? What's your effort going to be? And then, how will this change you? You see, Mark has said for the last 2 weeks that we're looking, as we go to 2 services in a few months, that we need 40 extra people who aren't serving to get on the wall and pick up a trowel and start the work. Now, I know for many of us, this seems like this is such a pastor thing to do, to use the pulpit to ask you to do more. And I know that that's probably how it feels. And some of you are thinking like, well, I don't have any more. I don't have any more to give. And therefore, doubts and insecurities may come up and all kinds of arguments as to why you should or shouldn't do this. And the bottom line, it's just really inconvenient to be able to, share, do a little bit more when it's already hard to deal with kids and schedules and all that. So listen, this is not meant to be any type of a way of guilting you into doing something that you don't want to do. I know I talked about, refusing the yoke and all that stuff. The truth is, it should be something that you want to do. Ultimately, it's not about what you're building. It's about what God is building in you. I want to say that again. When we think of the sacrifices and the work that we do, we think about the work that we're doing. And we often overlook the work that God is actually doing in us when we say, yes, I want to help. I want to work. I want to see lives changed. This is what the Apostle Paul says in Philippians. Being confident of this very thing, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. Remember what the people said? Yes, let's do this thing. And they began the good work. On one hand, you can see, yes, we do good work as people, but no, what Paul's saying here is God's going to do a good work in you. And not only is it being a good work done in you, but it's being a good work done on you. This is what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. You are living stones being built into a spiritual house. Those stones together as community, those stones are being built into a house that is significant, and together become a holy priesthood that is transcendence, doing more than we could ever do on our own. God is calling us to a community to be significant with what we do, and how we do it together is going to just transcend any single effort of one of us. No one of us is as good as all of us. Therefore, we need to think differently. We need to think differently. It's going to take an unconventional approach to get the stuff done around here that we need to get done. What I mean by that, we're going to have to do stuff the way we've never done it before. Conventional thinking says just jumping in and getting to work might not be our first choice, because we might want to get a degree in wall building. We might want to get a couple semesters in wall design and how we go about learning what we're going to do. Or conventional thinking might say, if I sign up for something that I've never done before and I'm inexperienced with, well, that's going to be a disaster. So let's get the people who are really good. Let's go ahead and get some masons and some carpenters. They know what they're doing. I don't. That's conventional thinking. Conventional thinking is basically, wouldn't it be best to do it the way that we've always done it? Let's take our time and restore things to its former glory. That's conventional thinking. Unconventional thinking says, jump right in. Sign up and go for it. Let go of the past and embrace the future. No one was concerned about skills, just speed. Remember those junior high girls in Redwood City that I was talking about at the beginning? The amazing story of them kind of like not even knowing how to play basketball to becoming national champions. How did that happen? It took unconventional thinking. Don't play basketball the way everybody plays basketball, where you inbound the ball and you run it down to the other side of the court, where everybody's sitting there waiting for you. Just press. Full court press the whole time. Create confusion. Get turnovers. Put layups in. More score on the board. That was unconventional thinking. So you're probably wondering how I heard about this story. I remembered it from this book right here. This is a book by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath. Probably read it about 10, 12 years ago. And this story stuck out to me. And what Gladwell points out is that he basically calls us underdogs, misfits, and the art of battling giants. He basically says, we all look at the story of David and Goliath and think, like, David was the underdog. Goliath was the champion. Goliath had all the strength. Goliath was going to take David and just completely annihilate him. I mean, that's what when you read the story leading up to it, you think, oh my gosh. In fact, when David, he's just this small shepherd boy who's not even asked to come, maybe help with the army of Israel to defeat the Philistines. He basically just kind of shows up and says, hey, what's going on? Well, this guy is basically challenging us to hand-to-hand combat, and nobody's willing to go up and battle him because look how big he is. David says, I'll do it. And, everybody gets concerned, right? Even Saul says, hey, listen, young David, come here. You might want this armor, and you might want this spear, and you might have a chance, but good luck. That's not what David did. He was like, the armor doesn't work for me. The spear, it's too heavy. So what David did is David did what he knew how to do, and that was protect his flock by using a sling and some rocks. Now the rocks in Jerusalem, Bethlehem at that time, they're still there today. They're very, very hard rocks. They're incredibly dense. And so David had gotten used to, killing lions and taking care of wolves and just like, get out of here. And slingers back in that day, it has been shown to have been incredibly accurate up to 200 yards away and very lethal because the hardness of those rocks and the speed by which a rock can come out of a sling was equivalent to a .45 caliber handgun. So when David said, I think I'll use what I know how to use. I'll just lean in what I can do and not what you want me to do. So in the end, when you think about it, the real underdog was Goliath. David had the skills. He had the ability. He just used what he knew how to use. And so when you think in terms of what happened, Goliath takes one between the eyes. He got shot between the eyes. David decided to fight Goliath in an unconventional way. Had he gone hand to hand in the conventional way, he would have certainly been defeated. In fact, Gladwell goes on to say, when you do things a conventional way and you're not typically skilled at it, you're probably going to lose 68% of the time. But if you take a unconventional way, those stats just go opposite. You have a chance of winning almost 68% of the time by using an unconventional approach. When others, or perhaps even yourself, presume that you're weak, incapable, easily bullied, remember that David took an unconventional approach. Instead of putting on Saul's armor and grabbing his spear, he took hold of the things that he knew that would work. And if you think that you're too small, and you're too weak, and you're too insignificant to face what's in front of you, and you're being asked to put on something that you're not comfortable with, and to work with things that you've never used before, and if you think you're inexperienced to do the job, and you're going to get beat up doing it, then it's time to think again. It's time to put on a full court press. And that's what we're asking of you. That's what we're asking of you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I'm always amazed at how you use these stories from long ago to challenge us, to instruct us, to encourage us. And all we need to do now, Lord, is just embrace that challenge, to embrace that encouragement, to embrace that opportunity. Help us, Father, we pray, as a church, to know our part on the wall, to grab a trowel, to get to work, and to do it with such zealousness, Lord, that we will be blessed. We want to be blessed. We want this church to be blessed. We want our city to be blessed. God, may you do the blessing because your Holy Spirit is with us. We pray this in Jesus' name.